Hello, this is my presentation about Marie Curie. Hello, this is my presentation about Marie Curie and X-rays for LB-274. So for this project, I wanted to really investigate and create something. So I decided to look into the evolution of one of the most important inventions in modern medicine, the X-ray. And as someone who is applying to medical school this year, this is very relevant to my future field of study. So X-rays were discovered in 1895 by a German scientist named Wilhelm Röntgen. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. And he called these X-rays simply because he did not know what they were at the time when he discovered them. And this is the first image that he ever took of his wife's left hand, and you can actually see her wedding band on her left finger. But it wasn't until 1897 that the woman of the hour, Marie Curie, began her research on X-rays. Marie Curie was born in Poland as Marie Sklodowska in 1867. And then after a primary education in Poland, she traveled to Paris in 1891 to the Sorbonne, one of the best universities in the world, where she met her eventual husband, Pierre Curie. And then after she graduated from there, she came across Röntgen's old work and began to study X-rays. So for her experiments, Marie determined that there was some sort of energy within these X-rays that she called radioactivity. And she and Pierre, her husband, they discovered two new elements this way. Polonium, named for Poland, her home country, and radium, the more arguably famous of the two. And so for discovering the properties of radioactivity and discovering these new elements, Marie actually won two Nobel Prizes. But then in 1906, Pierre, her husband, he was actually trampled by a horse cart and killed. And so as a result of this, Marie did take over his professorship at the Sorbonne and taught classes there. When World War I broke out in Europe, it was generally catastrophic. Lots of deaths on both sides, for the French, the Germans, the Austrians, everyone. But then because of the sheer amount of casualties, there wasn't enough time to properly evaluate a soldier's injuries on the battlefield. So Marie and her daughter, her older daughter, Irene, they devised a solution with the help and money from the French government that they then implemented. So they call these les petites curies, or the petite curies, you would call them. And they are like a small X-ray machine that can be driven to an area where wounded soldiers were with a fully trained medical team inside. And Marie and Irene were two of the drivers, but there were actually 20 of them. And then since they were taking the X-rays at the front before the care was given, the medical team had a much easier time determining whether they could do the surgery on the field or if they had to go out to a hospital or outsource it somewhere. And there's a picture of Marie on the right. So the petite curies, they had obviously an X-ray machine used by the medical staff with a built-in hospital bed. And these machines were connected actually to a generator that was part of the engine. So it was kind of a self-sufficient power source. It didn't need to be connected to anything, which I thought was very interesting. These are just some more photos showing what they look like and some slight variations. So for creating, I went to the cell that Dr. Record runs, and I made a small model of it using household materials, tinfoil, cardboard, popsicle sticks, felt pipe, cleaners, etc. And constructing this took a lot longer than I thought it would, especially since I had to sew on the curtains by hand. But overall, I am very happy with how it turned out. This is just another photo of like the whole thing on the left, and then the inside part where the medical care would have taken place. So Marie Curie, the petite Curies, they're not really associated with her as much as radioactivity and radium, because a lot of websites and even some books that you read about her, it's like a very niche thing and not referenced a lot. But I really think that this is something that should be brought up more, her contributions to the modern medical field. But I think a reason for that is because the cause of her death, aplastic anemia, is a bone disease caused by the high levels of radium that she was exposed to for all the years of working with it. And even to this day, if someone wants to tour her home or her library or somewhere, they need to not only sign a waiver, but also wear a bunch of protective gear to combat the radiation. And most of her belongings are encased in lead. And because of this, no one can read her notebooks. No one can access her work because it's so toxic. And even her and Pierre's corpses are considered radioactive, and so their coffins are encased in lead to prevent, hurting people who could be near them. So in conclusion, Marie Curie's work on X-rays revolutionized emergency medical care on the battlefield. And this legacy of scientific achievement across so many fronts, no pun intended, is something that, all scientists everywhere should strive to emulate. Thank you. And these are the sources that I used.
late.